mainframe computer, which allowed you to access or do operations on that mainframe computer. But these days, all the computers don't need shell, or most of the computers don't even have it. So they need to be emulated, and we have shell emulators or terminal emulators for that. So what's a shell script? It's a command language for shells or whatever shell you're using. So there are lots of shells, or lots of standards of shells. So the most popular one is Bash, Born Again shell. It is named after Mr. Born, who created Born shell, which was then worked on to create the Bash shell. And there are lots of other shells. Each one usually comes with its own syntax. Usually the syntax vary with very little. The syntax have very little bit of changes. They just are semantically different in some form or the other. But there are some shells which have extremely different semantics. For example, C shell is C-ish syntax. It has a more C-ish syntax. Similarly, Powershell has a different syntax. Same for fish. And then there's new shell. Elvish is a functional shell. So this one is supposed to be inspired from functional programming languages. CMD is the command prompt everyone is familiar with in Windows. And then there is scheme shell, which is similar to the scheme programming language. But the main question about shells is how do they work? So most of the people that I talk to or know don't really understand how shells work. So the way shells work, or they are supposed to work, this is the architecture. The architectures are slightly different depending upon the operating system. But we will keep on discussing how it works in Unix for now, or at least in Linux. So you have a shell process, which is shown to you in terminal emulator. You have a terminal file which it reads and writes to, and then you can create sub shell processes, and it will inherit the same file descriptors to the same terminal file for reading and writing. This allows you to create sub processes that yield their output or results to the same shell. This is how you get to create some other process which blocks the shell, but the state or the errors that are produced by the program are still shown on the shell. Such as if you were to run Chrome or Firefox, then if there's a bug, or if Chrome or Firefox crashes, then you get the stack trace in the shell, or the shell that you're viewing, because they inherit the file descriptors from the same shell process. This allows for a lot of things, including redirection, piping, and etc. So this allows you to pipe output from one point to another and redirect it in different ways. So having two file descriptors allows you to have two different pipes to redirect to and from. So you can take both the input and the output of each command on the shell and send it to different, or redirect it to a different command. I will show you an example of that later. So now, how should we be using the shell, or how should we use the shell the right way? So what is the right way is subjective as per the person, but there are some rules that you need to follow or understand about the shells, or every one of the shells that you will see have or follow. So path to everything. So all the shells have a path variable. This variable is simply going to locate all the folders that the shell must search for its commands and other utilities and things whenever you enter a command. So this is where the search, all the searches for the shell will start. It goes from left to right and so forth. And then there are exports. So path is a variable, but how do you get the variable to be known inside a shell? That's through export keywords. These help you to export variables in the global context, similar to how exporting works in any other language. Aliases, these help you alias a command or give the command a different name, or give a shorter names to the command. Giving shortcut names to commands is the most common use of it. So that's it. Let's get started with testing these things out. So so we have three shells over here. Yeah. Just, yeah. So there's the Windows PowerShell, there's the modern PowerShell, and there's WSL, uh, uh, Windows subsystem for Linux, and it's running Debian, I suppose. Uh, yeah, it's running Debian. Right. So let's get started with some of the commands. So there are three different commands: rm, ls, and man. These are the ones that you will probably mostly be using, and there's also echo. So this is echoes to the same terminal file. So if you have anything that you want to write to a file, you can use echo for it. And basically what echo does, it takes a string, passes it
Arun,
as a,
hello. Arun, can you hear me?
yeah.
Arun, can you increase your font? I can see it, but many people may not be able to see it. Font size, please.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this should be okay.
Much better. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. This is perfect. Thank you.
So echo does to the same file. So uh, before that, let's understand KTYs.
Just sir, can you mute your mic? You're having echo, I think.
So these are some of the commands that you will probably likely be using most of the time. And man is to check the docs for any of the commands. You can just hit man. Oh yeah. So I don't have man installed in my Debian. So you can just install any of these commands using sudo apt install man, or in Debian I believe it's dman or Debian man. Uh, Okay. It's either man or daemon. Yeah, ManDB. So you can just install it and it'll have everything that we need. I'm just going to skip that part for now because man is probably not something that we need right now. So let's start with ls. Using ls gives us nothing over here, but let's create something so that we can check it out. Touch new file and find out ls. This is what it will give you. If you can now, ls has a lot of flags. So one of the flags is a, or shortcut for that is la, and you can see that we get everything that is in this directory. So this is my home directory, and this has only hidden files. So this only becomes visible when you use an la, and all the hidden files start with dot. And here are some of the files. So on the left hand side, these are the permissions for each of the files. You can change the permission using the chmod command. Uh, these have 4, 2, 1, and 0 as its values, and these can then be converted into combinations of these values. So you can 0 is applied to all of them, so you don't need to consider that. You can do 1 plus 2 and you get 3, and so on and so forth. So in chmod 4, 2, 1, and 0, and 7 is 4 plus 1. So this basically means all the permissions. And similarly, there are others, and you can just mix and match these commands to get different values. You can get 4 plus 2, 6, and so on and so forth. So each one will have different permission levels. 0 is for all. One is for, if I remember correctly, execute. 2 is for write, and 4 is for read. Yeah, that's, if I remember correctly, that's what the order is. You can just confirm it. So, yep, those seem to be the value. If you want more mnemonic values to be used, then you can just use R, W, and R, or R and W. This will give you read, write, and plus for executable. So that's pretty much it for chmod. And then we have dealt with ls. It lists files, and if you use la or ls-a, it will list all the files. La has a few other flags in it. All right. So next, moving on to delete or rm. What we have created last time, we can just use it and delete that, and we can just check it with ls and la. We don't have it. Then moving forward to some other important commands. There will be grep. This is g regular expression. It's a g regular. It's basically a regular expression matching. So if I do echo, let's just use the la command and grep -a and search for new file, which will not be found because we have deleted it, and now we can just create it. So I've been using touch. So touch creates new files. That's pretty much what we are going to be using it for. It can do a lot of different things. You can also create files using other means, such as echo. Oh, sorry. Let's not use this. Now we can just go back to our LA command, and we can see that we have the new file, and we can just check. This is what grep I does. It gives you the entire line. If you remove I, then I is for case insensitive, I believe. I'm not sure. I will have to check the man page for the grep. But grep is basically for matching regular expression, so you can use wildcards in here. So if I do new underscore asterisk, and so let's create another file, new old, and let's do new file. If you just give us the new file, and if you do array grep new asterisk, oh sorry, if you do new asterisk, then it will give you all the files starting with the name new. You can do it other way around as well. So I make it anything underscore. So sorry, it should end with underscore if I do that. So and yeah, okay, yeah. So it is wrong regular expression because anything underscore anything is on. Okay. Yeah. So that's grep. We have discussed touch, and now let's discuss some other commands or the operators of the shell. So there are three most common operators. Four most common operators. Just correct that. These are the four operators that you will commonly see people using, and each one has a different purpose. So if you have multiple commands that you want to put into the same line, then you can use the semicolon. So if I wanted to do clear ls, then I can just do this. Clear, and then ls works the same way. Clear or ls. This is a little different. This uses an exit code of each process. So this won't do the ls, but just the clear. You can try it the other way around as well. Or you can just write -1 over here. Oh, sorry. Command that will so -1 is not a command, and new file and old file, they work the same way. I'll just put it over here. Right. And now you can do ls and no clear. So and means both will get executed. This or this slash or bar, if I believe that's the term for it. Bar means that whichever one succeeds first will get executed. So you can have a long chain of these. So if I just mess up the spelling over here, then it will get executed till ls, and it will not. So it won't do the clear. And if I and then because it can't execute, it will also do the clear. So that's it. So this marks the end of each statement, and these were the primary operators. Then there is the pipe operator. This allows to pipe FD results from std in input to output.
Swarnim,
Yeah.
someone's asking you to repeat what does 0 refer to in the chmod command.
0 means let me just confirm it myself. 0 means that it has no permissions. From what I remember, just check it. 0 means no permissions. 1 means execute. 2 means write. 4 means read. So let me just write it out here. 4 is read, is write, 1 is execute, and 0 is none. And 0 is none. Yeah, so these are the four permissions. Now you can use various combinations of that. So 7 is a combination of all of them. 5 is 4 plus 1, so it can read and execute, not write. And so this is how you build commands such as this. That's it for chmod, I believe. Moving back to, I believe you are at operators. So we have discussed all the 4 operators. Just write them out again. Or, and, or, for successful exit code. There's and, execute all, mark end of statement, and then which one? Oh yeah, this is pipe out to in. So pipe basically is, so echo hello will give us a hello, and if we use pipe and then sorry, if we just move that, if we use echo hello and then you can just echo it. Oh, sorry, what was it? Yeah, let's just use a grep example for now. Then we were going to discuss the TTY example, LA. We still have the files, I believe. Yeah. So LA grep. So LA gives us all the output of these, and we can just do grep dash I. And for now, I will just want to search 88. So search it from on the top. That's basically, we can pipe it to the next result. Grep is meant to be used with pipes. Usually, there are other ways of using it as well. And then there are a few other operators that are not as commonly used. Append, overwrite. These are the operators you commonly use for writing to files. So if I just cat file, then it has nothing. But if we use echo hello and new file, then we can just cat new file and we can get hello out of it. Cat command just prints cat command prints the contents of a file in the default format. So if you have some other files other than ASCII or UTF-8, I believe UTF-8 and ASCII are the defaults. So if either of those don't match it, then it will just display some garbage out to you. And you can just do cat new file and you can check what it was. You can do hello and add append and then try the cat again. You will have 2 hellos. You can remove the append and you will have a single hello. So that's pretty much it. One is an overwrite, one is for append. So moving forward, we have a few other there are a few other key commands that you might want to know about, which is a nice command if you want to confirm if something exists. So you can just say com, it was not found. So you can write your scripts in such a way that so if I have com, then rather than this, let's use a more realistic example. Man, if I have man, then execute man ls. So oh yeah, so which was successful in this case, yeah, because which will always give us one. So you can just check whatever the output of it is. So apparently there are a lot of calls today. Just a second.
So while he's on his call, does anyone here have any questions? Or on YouTube, you can type in the chat. I'll ask the speaker.
Also, just to mention this, if I haven't, that hash is similar to Python and it's used for comments. So it will follow whatever the last exit code was. So it gets changed whenever new exit code is returned. If anybody's thinking why the color is becoming red and green again and again, so if you just hit enter, it will just follow whatever the last execution was. So Claire will just put it back to. Now let's start with writing a shell script, a very basic one. Let's try. All right. So you can use V or Vim. V is found by default in all the Unix shells, so you can use that. But most shells will also have nano, and it's easier to use, so you can probably start with that if you're focused on using it by the shell. So let's try nano for now. Let's use a for loop. But stitch and this new file, and you can just quickly paste in some code. And you can just check what is in the file, and then you can just execute it using sh for loop shell. Oh, sorry, I not found. Yeah. So these values are at the brackets. So this was to show that different shells can work differently. So do I have fish installed? Just check. Yeah, I don't have fish installed. You can even try it like this. It won't work because you need a dollar before I as well. So So now you can just actually put any kind of command in there. So I can put in, if I remember correctly, let's put in oh echo hello command in there. You can just do this, or you can just have it do something like $I into $I. And this is a nice example because you can just understand why it will and will not work in this case. As you can see, the main reason for that is because let me just explain it once we enter it. Yeah, so I'm using none over here, but to make it clear, $I is only accessible inside the script, and because it's only accessible inside the script, once we do this brackets, it just basically becomes an eval expression. So it is going to go to the shell and it's going to evaluate this value. So $I does not represent any value. So if instead of this, I was rather than doing this, if I was going to do new file and new old, sorry, new old, do done, and sorry, echo file contents $I. We can do get so you can check what the content of a file is like this. It's a simple for loop of example, and this helps you understand that everything. But this also, let me just break down every part of it before I move on to explaining something else. So this helps us tell the shell, the machine what shell to use. So .sh represents the environment or the shell it should be executed in. If we try to execute it without a shell command, so let me just go out of it and let's try and execute for loop.sh. Now the first mistake is permission denied. We cannot execute for loop.sh. This is because we need to set the permissions using excuse me. Yeah, you need to set up the permissions using the values, and over here 755, like I had explained earlier, this basically means we can execute it. So oh sorry, hold on. And now we will have the permissions to execute it, and you can see that it executes fine enough. Now we can just change the values inside of the new old file. Sorry. Some more data to print, and we can add it to the new old file, and this will basically mean that if we run for loop.sh now, we'll get some more data to print. So you can write shell programs like these and dot let me just move back. Yeah, so this will help you, this tag will help you tell the computer, the machine which shell it should use to execute it. Python programmers like to do /py if it's in there, but for now let's just keep it at sh. This is basic example of for loop, but there are other ways of doing it, such as reading a variable, which is a common example, which is done in a similar fashion. You can just say read or read x or something, your variable name, and then it can be accessed with the $sign. So $sign for accessing variables. And this, just to make it clear, this is the syntax for the bash or the sh shells, and also works in Z shell and few others. So, but there are other shells which have different syntax. Fish is similar, but it doesn't need the dollar symbols, and there are a few other changes along these lines. And there are other functions built into the shells. Different shells can have different functions, but this is the general gist of it. And now I think it's probably time to take in some questions. And yeah, so let me just before that show you that there are some other commands that work in Windows shell and some don't. So if you try, let me try echo. So hello, this is going to work, but if you try to do ls grep, so it will give you an error. And even if you try to do something like clear, these operators don't work in the Windows default PowerShell. You can get a different PowerShell machine. So these have all of those. You can just do ls clear, and it just won't execute. And now you can just do ls clear and it will execute it. So this is the new PowerShell version 7.0, if I remember correctly. So that's it for now. Yeah, and let me just explain some of the keywords. Export alias, and one very nice command is source. So you can use this to source files from which exports and aliases and other bash configurations and settings are to be imported. So this is a one-time thing and happens only in the current shell. So you can use it, but it won't be permanent. Export gives us variables, and alias gives shorthands for new names, basically. But you can even have a longer name. So you can write something like alias ls, or you can just say long ls for everyone, something like this, and then you can assign it la, and then you can just use long ls for everyone, and this will work as an la. You can just confirm it. Export gives you variables. In our case, we can just verify it using some values such as, sorry, let's see, path is a default variable. So I'm just going to clear this. That's a lot of things, and this is to let's check if variable exists using echo. So new var, sorry, new var. This does not exist. We can do an
Swarnim,
experiment. New var, yeah.
Swarnim, we have a question from someone. So, can you tell which what you're using to write shell scripts in Windows? Like, is it the default PowerShell on Windows or something else?
Yeah, in Windows, there is PowerShell has some scripting functionality, but more or less everyone writes bat files, dot bat files. So that's a very different subject. But uh, let me just. Uh, so basically, PowerShell can accept a script, but PowerShell scripting has, let me just bring out the docs for PowerShell. PowerShell is basically quite limited, so people usually write bat files because that works with Windows by default and does not require PowerShell. So there's that. But PowerShell has a lot of things, such as you can. A good example will be the. I think a good example will be like, yeah. So you can write get help, and then you can write the name of the command, uh, and yeah. So this is similar to how man works, but this is for Windows and PowerShell specifically. And I mean, there are some aliases for it, like GSV is for get service. uh, this is get service. And most of these have some kind of way of doing it, and there are few operators that do work in PowerShell, such as this type operator kind of works in PowerShell, but you don't have a lot of things to use it on. So but they are basically PowerShell has completely different command sets. So unless you are going to be moving from Linux to Windows development environment, I would recommend to just not really waste your time with PowerShell. Just use WSL for now. If you want to use PowerShell, yeah, you can just check out the docs. Let me just open them up. Uh, and yeah, so here's the docs for PowerShell. So basically, PowerShell is also open source. So it's not like it's not open source, but it's built on top of .NET, and it works on Linux as well. But yeah, well, I've never seen anybody use PowerShell in Linux, so there's that. And basically, PowerShell is for those who don't want to write bat scripts in Windows. So bat scripting is pretty wasteful. Batch scripting. Let me just show you. Windows has pretty decent docs. At times better than Linux, perhaps. I'm not sure, but overall both sides have good docs. But the commands in Windows side just don't really make much sense if you are used to Linux. That's pretty much it. But things such as redirection work. So you can still do stuff like this type null. So let me just check the files. It has a lot of files, but does it have a new file? It does not. And we can so type null. new file. So we can just check. Now new file exists. So if it didn't exist, we would have gotten this error. But after this, new file exists, and this type null gives us an error because this is how the original Microsoft PowerShell was designed. It was supposed to give error, and it's sort of a hack. But yeah, so hopefully everyone gets the point. Also, jumping from multiple shells is pretty annoying, so I would recommend just stick to one shell. Such as if you are using fish, just go and check out its syntax and just stick with it for as long as you can, because jumping shells can be pretty annoying. I have at times forgotten many or made many mistakes in my code, and then debugging shell scripts is pretty painful, if you understand that. So I think this is time for questions. So if you want any ideas or any questions about any of these, feel free to ask.
Is on.
So yeah, does anyone else have any more questions? Type that in the chat if you're on YouTube. Let's wait a few seconds because we're on a little delay on YouTube.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, so I guess we don't have questions as of now. Thank you everyone for coming to this talk. I hope you learned something. And thanks Swarnim for this talk on introduction to shell scripting. Do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I would say that shell scripting is pretty easy, and I think that I would recommend using default shell scripts or creating a folder in your. I'll just show you guys. My C directory, even on my Windows, has a folder named My Scripts, and I store some of the default scripts that I use. This is one example of it. Over here, I list new files and old files, but you can actually do a lot more than that. You can have similar scripts that do something very specific that you
Is
usually
on.
use, and just put it into a directory, put that directory into a path. And yeah, there was also one very nice command that I forgot to show. You can just quickly do ln dash dash help. So this is ln command. This is used for creating symlinks, and usually we'll be creating hard links. So ln, let me just show you how to create hard links. So I have new file, old file, two different files. So I'm just gonna cat new file, and let's just create an ln dash s. It means symbolic link. New file, and sorry, new file. So I'm creating a symlink from new file to new file. So basically that's it. Now we can just quickly do an LA and see that the new file is linked to new file. So usually our system will have multiple multitude of these links, and I have on my Linux box there are dozens of these. And but over here you can see that my Win configurations are symlinked. This is an example of new file, and I'm just going to cat on newer file, and you can see what happens. Now if I were to go and echo some random text and add it to new file, and then cat new file again, then we can see that I have edited the new file, but the edit shows in the new file as well. There are two types of links, soft and hard. The technical differences are few, but I don't think there are. I just use hard links almost everywhere. I would recommend that, but because I've never found any use for soft links. If anybody uses soft links, please do tell. So that's it. I guess we have covered all the major commands that everybody uses on a daily basis in Linux. I guess that's probably it.
Thank you for this great talk.